Hi, I'm Heather,
And I'm Jon.
and this is our front yard permaculture garden. So since we bought our house about 10 years ago, we have been slowly converting this, what was once a traditional grass lawn, into a more productive and more sustainable permaculture garden.
There was two primary reasons why we decided to convert our traditional front yard into a permaculture garden. Number one, we were interested in food self-sufficiency, and we wanted to optimize the space and get the most out of it while conserving resources like water harvesting and being mindful of our impact. And permaculture really was the key to unlocking that and to getting the most out of our front yard that we possibly could. The second was we were looking for tangible, something we could do that would translate our passion for environmental issues into something real and something that we could integrate into our household. And again, this was a logical solution for us because it was something that you can touch it, you can feel it, you can get your hands dirty and see the change in relatively short order. We had the way it came about was we had worked with the Permaculture Research Institute of Saskatchewan to organize what's called a Permablitz. So the Permablitz is essentially it happens in one day. We worked with some permaculture certified permaculture designers to design the space. And then over the course of the day, we had volunteers come and transform it within 8 hours. And it was incredible to watch it going from a lawn to, putting in the swales and putting in some of the features that allow the yard to kind of be what it is today. So that experience was really rewarding, and I think we're still enjoying the benefits of that to this day, and will for many years to come.
So there are a few different permaculture design principles that went into the design that we are excited to show you today. So one of the biggest things that has really saved us a lot of efforts in maintaining our garden is this mulch pathway that you see all the way through the garden. So during the Permablitz, we ended up digging these little kind of trenches that go all through the garden. And what those do, once we've filled them with mulch, is they collect rainwater when it falls, and it stores it there and gradually releases it into the garden beds. And so that really has reduced the need for us to water anything. The only times we really need to water is if, say, we've had a really hot, dry spell for a long period of time, or if we have recently planted or transplanted anything. So with that rainwater harvest, we also have rain barrels around our yard, and every year we're kind of working to improve that storage system as well so that we can reduce the need for really watering using city water at all.
So another feature of the permaculture yard that you can see here today is kind of the layered gardening. So one of the things that we've tried to achieve is to mimic a forest kind of ecosystem where you have different profiles, different heights of different plant species, and as we've gotten to know the space and plant different plant species, you see what does well in different areas, and that approach has really helped us optimize and get find out what does well where, but also help retain some of the moisture as well, because we've got ground cover and different heights and different varieties of plants.
So, and I think that those layers really show kind of another aspect of permaculture that is really all about relationships. So with the layers that Jon was talking about, it starts with the soil layer and everything that lives within the soil. So that was something that we, as pretty novice gardeners, hadn't really thought about, was your soil health, and how a lot of the soil that we have around in our gardens is really kind of dead soil. So we want to try to put as many nutrients into our soil as possible. So that's that first layer. And then you've got your kind of low ground covers. You have your perennials and annuals that die back every year. You've got your shrubs that come back every year. And then you've got your larger canopy layer with larger trees that filter the sunlight for the plants below. And then as those plants die back and decompose, those kind of help to feed into that soil layer as well. And it also helps to mulch the garden so that for moisture retention. But yeah, so you can kind of really see, and over time you have to really, with a permaculture garden, or really any garden, you're observing it over time. You're kind of responding as you can see, oh, this plant isn't doing very well over here, maybe it would be happier over here. And over time your garden sort of tells you what it needs. And it's interesting to see how the plants kind of interact with each other, and how, as one plant grows a little larger and shades this one starts to get a little happier if it was getting too hot before. So yeah.
Just the variety and the diversity of plants that you're able to fit in a small space, and conventional gardening, allows for that as well. But I think that's been something that we've, really enjoyed, trying different things and seeing what works. But certainly a lot of diversity that we packed into a relatively small area for, in this space.
Mm-hmm. And that diversity has really helped with things like, so we've recently encountered a few different pest issues in our garden. But the nice thing about having so many different plant species is if one plant or one kind of family of plants gets attacked one year, we can kind of just manage that. But then the rest of the garden is still healthy. And so we find that it's easier to recover from an infestation of any sort of pest. And another thing is that we have some two children. We have some children. We have two children, and it's been really fun coming out into the garden with them every day and seeing new species of insects. And we got our first hummingbird visit the other day, so that was really exciting. So by increasing the plant diversity in our garden, we've also increased the insect and bird population diversity as well. So just a few other benefits that we've noticed with our permaculture garden is with all of the rainwater harvesting, we were actually able to completely get rid of some basement flooding issues that we were experiencing in the first few years of owning our home. By holding on to the water, harvesting it, and then using it when we really need it, we were able to divert that water from going either onto the road or down into our basement. So that's been really helpful, and I think that the more yards that undergo transformations like this, the ideal or the hope would be that we could mitigate some of the civic flooding that we've seen in Saskatoon and in other areas around the country as well.
Yeah, it's certainly a more resilient, system, and like microcosm, I guess. But it's certainly, and we've seen that over the years, whether it's a drought year or otherwise. So the other thing about doing this in our front yard is that we've probably doubled or tripled our growing space, which in a city lot, when you try to think about how much room you have to grow things and what you can do to get the most out of it, I really do think that had we not done used permaculture to transform the yard, we wouldn't have have quite the amount of the garden wouldn't have done quite as well, and we wouldn't have as much garden to enjoy. So that's been certainly another benefit. The last one is just like the ability to enjoy your lawn and your front yard in a different way than you would with a lawn, with a traditional lawn. We do spend a lot of time in this space, even just walking around and watching things grow, and that has meant more conversations with neighbors. It is unique, and so that means that it does draw some attention and people stop to ask questions, but it is a good conversation starter with people who might be walking by. Our children have really enjoyed running around. We play tag on the paths, and so it's really become a different, it has unlocked other benefits, and we can use it in different ways.
So yeah, and speaking of, I think you were talking about just maximizing our growing space. So as John mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that we wanted to do this was we wanted to grow as much food as we possibly could. I mean, tastier and healthier, and it's really nice to know where your food is coming from. So because we did this large Permablitz, we had a huge space to deal with during those first few years. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of work trying to get this established. Now it's a little bit, it requires a little bit less maintenance, but I would say for anybody who might be interested in starting something like this, if you can start with smaller areas and kind of do it in pieces, that might be less maintenance up front. But what we did and found to be really useful is during those first few years, we planted a lot of annual vegetables in our front garden, and then tried to kind of interplant it with flowers and things so that people didn't think it was too crazy, because it is a little bit out of the, it's a bit of a contrast compared with other traditional lawn gardens in the neighborhood. So we did want to make it as aesthetically appealing as possible. But planting things like pumpkins that add some interest to our yard, but also the great big leaves that helped keep the weeds down was really helpful. And then over time, we've just gradually started to replace some of those annual vegetables with perennial fruit trees and vegetables as well. So now we've got things like cherries and currants, cranberries. What else is coming back every year? Gooseberries, rhubarb. So another feature in our garden is our herb spiral. And so this is just basically a method of using stone or bricks or whatever you have on hand to create this sort of layered, rising vertical garden. And what it does is it helps you to create these microclimates. So for herbs that require less water and more sunlight, you can kind of plant those on top. And then all around the spiral, you've created these different growing conditions within a very small space. So yeah, and that's been a lot of fun to work with as well.
In closing, we would say that if you're interested in permaculture, if this type of thing, if you'd like to do something similar in your yard, strongly suggest you check out the Permaculture Research Institute of Saskatchewan, or PermaSask. They were the local organization, and their volunteers helped with the design and again transforming our yard through the Permablitz. There are also a lot of other resources online with regard to permaculture, and encourage people to check that out. If something at this scale it seems a little daunting, you can always start small, and there's plenty of ways to incorporate permaculture design principles into your garden, no matter the size. So
thank you for letting us talk to you about our plants, and happy gardening.